I spent 18 months building a life with a man who didn't exist. His wife found me, then she found my mother. Everyone wants to know, how did I not see it? Was I just a victim? Or was I so happy being convenient that I never bothered to look too close? I need to start at the beginning, because that's the only place where any of this makes sense. My name doesn't matter, but my job does at least. That's what I told myself. I'm 38, and I've built a career that swallows everything I have. Marriage? No, thank you. I watched my parents' marriage rot from the inside, and I swore I'd never let someone else's chaos derail my life. So when I met David at a software conference in late August of 2024, I thought I'd finally found the exception that proved the rule. We were at a UKG conferencia, sea of badge holders and small talk. He stood out, charismatic, easy, the kind of guy who makes you feel like you've known him for years after 5 minutes. We both supported the same software, different industries, instant professional connection. We exchanged info like everyone does, and I didn't think much of it until a few weeks later when he texted asking if I wanted to meet up for lunch. I remember smiling at my phone. He was attractive, and the truth is, I was lonely in a way I didn't like to admit. My job ate my evenings, my weekends were often catch up. I'd long since accepted that a traditional relationship would never fit. But David seemed different. The lunch turned romantic almost by accident. Or maybe not accident. We talked for 3 hours, and by the end, Head paid the bill, walked me to my car, and kissed me like Head been waiting to do it all afternoon. Within a month and a half, we had a rhythm. Head drive the 45 minutes to my place. Said he lived about 45 minutes away and we'd spend evenings together a couple times a week, with most weekends at my house. For me, it was perfect. I didn't have to give up my career, he understood my schedule. He never pressured me to meet his friends or integrate our lives. I thought he was making concessions for me because he saw how important my work was. I thought I'd found the only man on earth who could love me without needing to own me. But then something shifted. Around April, about 6 months in, he started pushing this idea that we needed to be official. I remember being confused. We were already exclusive. We spent nearly all our free time together. We texted constantly. What did official even mean? He made it seem like I was being weird for questioning it, like maybe I was the one with commitment issues. So I shrugged it off and said, sure, we're official. It felt like a formality, not a red flag. I wish I could tell you that my gut screamed at me then, but it didn't. It whispered, and I ignored it. The next year was the smoothest of my life. He'd come over on weeknights, leave by 11, drive home. Weekends we'd cook together, watch movies, sometimes take day trips. He'd met my mom multiple dinners, even. My mom liked him. She said he had good energy. I felt like I'd hacked the system, a loving, supportive partner who never demanded more than I could give. I'm telling you all this because I need you to understand I was not suspicious. I was not looking for cracks. There was no late-night phone call He'd step outside for, no wedding ring tan line, no mysterious absences. He was present, he was attentive, and he seemed to have a job that let him travel, though I never questioned how often he was working from home. I was so grateful for the arrangement that I didn't ask the obvious questions. What was his address? Why had I never seen his place? Who were his friends? I told myself that was the beauty of what we had. We didn't need to merge. We just needed to show up. 18 months in, on a Tuesday evening, I got a Facebook message from a woman whose profile picture showed 2 kids and a smiling man I recognized as David. Her name was Jennifer. She introduced herself kindly, said she was sorry to reach out like this, but she needed to know if I was seeing her husband. She'd been married to him for 15 years. They had 2 children together. My fingers went numb against the screen. I read the message 6 times, waiting for the words to rearrange themselves into something else. They didn't. I responded with a list of questions. How long had she known? Did she have proof? Why was she contacting me now? She never answered. That first message was the only one I ever got from her. I sat in my apartment that night, phone in my lap, replaying every moment of the past year and a half. The way He'd pushed for official status felt different now, like a way to lock me into a story where I'd never looked deeper. The 45 minutes away, the weekends that aligned with my schedule, the lack of any footprint in my life. He hadn't been hiding because he was busy. He'd been hiding because he had a whole other life. I did what any betrayed person does. I became an investigator. I ran a background check. What I found made my stomach clench so hard I gagged. David did work for the company head claimed, but his listed residence wasn't 45 minutes away. It was in another state entirely. I have no idea how he managed the commute, the cost, the lies he must have told his wife to get those nights and weekends with me. Maybe he was a traveling consultant after all, and I'd just been a stop on the road. The thought made bile rise in my throat. I spent days in a fog. I'd go to work, come home, stare at the wall. I'd prided myself on being independent, smart, immune to this kind of manipulation. And yet I'd handed him a year and a half of my life on a silver platter. I stopped answering his calls and texts. He sent a few confused messages, then stopped. I guess he knew the jig was up. Then the second blow came. My mom called me on a Saturday, her voice shaking. She said a woman had reached out to her phone, not message, and had told her that I was a homewrecker, that I'd knowingly pursued a married man, that I was trying to destroy her family. My mom was crying, asking me what was true. I could hear the confusion in her voice, the same confusion I'd felt. David's wife had found my mother's contact information. How? I don't know, and instead of confronting her husband, she decided to burn my life to the ground. She wanted my own mother to see me as the villain. I explained everything to my mom, the 18 months, the lies, the discovery. She believed me, but the damage was done. In Jennifer's mind, I was the other woman, and she was going to make sure everyone I loved knew it. I haven't heard from her again. Maybe she got what she wanted, my humiliation. Maybe she went back to David and Thayer working it out. I don't know. What I know is that I'm sitting here, 38 years old, feeling more alone than I ever did before I met him. Because here's the part that keeps me up at night: was I really blind? Or did I choose to be? I was so content with the distance, so relieved that he didn't want to move in, or merge finances, or meet my friends more than once. I told myself I was being smart, protecting my independence. But maybe I was just protecting myself from the truth. Maybe, deep down, I didn't want to know if there was anything he was hiding. Because if I'd looked too close, I'd have to admit that the perfect arrangement was too good to be real. And now, every time I think about trust, I see her face, Jennifer Sand. I wonder if I deserve the blame she's placed on me. I never would have touched a married man. I would have run so fast. But I didn't run, because I never asked. And that's the question that will follow me for the rest of my life. Am I a victim of a master manipulator? Or am I just as guilty for being so relieved not to have to look?
Hello, I'm Dr. Julian Reed. The husband in this case, David, exhibits a classic constellation of behaviors that fall under what we might clinically term narcissistic duplicity, paired with coercive control. This is not simply infidelity. It is a deliberate, sustained architecture of deception designed to serve his own psychological needs at the expense of both his wife and his girlfriend. What stands out is the seamlessness of his fabrication. He didn't just lie about his marital status, constructed an entire parallel geography, living in another state, maintaining a work identity that allowed travel, and carefully calibrating his availability to fit the girlfriend's schedule. This requires meticulous planning and an almost professional-grade compartmentalization. The push to make the relationship official after 6 months was not a gesture of commitment. In the psychology of a manipulator, that demand served two purposes. First, it tested the girlfriend's willingness to accept his framing of reality. Second, it gave him a new layer of control once she agreed to the label. She was less likely to question inconsistencies because she now had a self-concept as his official partner. I want to validate what the girlfriend is feeling because it is critical. The shame and self-doubt she describes, wondering if she should have seen the Sincere textbook responses to being deceived by someone with this level of skill. We call this the deception aftermath, or sometimes retrospective vigilance. Our brains naturally try to rewrite the past to find clues we missed, but when someone is committed to hiding a double life, they exploit exactly the qualities that make a person trusting: the assumption of basic honesty, the desire to see the best in a partner. Her career-driven independence was not a flaw. It was the very trait he weaponized to keep her from asking for more integration. Then there is the wife's response: contacting the girlfriend and, more disturbingly, reaching out to the girlfriend's mother. That is an act of retaliatory shaming that, while understandable from a wounded spouse, serves to further isolate the girlfriend. David's deception created a dynamic where both women are now pitted against each other, while he has largely disappeared from the narrative. This is a textbook outcome of what we call triangulation. The manipulator leaves the scene, and the injured parties turn their anger toward one another, giving him an exit without accountability. The clinical label here matters less than the pattern. David is not a man who made a mistake. He engineered 2 separate lives for over a year, managing logistics, emotions, and identities with a chilling level of control. The girlfriend's question, "Am I complicit because I didn't look closer?" is exactly the kind of self-blame that keeps victims trapped. Complicity would require knowing and choosing to stay. She had neither. So here is the moral ambiguity I leave with you. We call a man like David a predator. But what do we do with people like him? Do we pathologize him as a narcissist and move on? Or do we ask what it says about a culture that rewards charm, availability, and the performance of commitment even when that performance is built on a foundation of lies? And more painfully for the viewer, if you were in her position, would you have looked closer? Or would you have been just as relieved not to have to ask?